So today I'm going to take you deeper into, of course, the shutdown of Daily Monitor and NTV, all under Nation Media Group. Remember, in May 2013, Uganda's media landscape faced one of its most defining crises when the state executed a full-scale military and a police siege on the Daily Monitor head offices in Namuwongo. That's happening, of course, again. It's like history is repeating itself in 2026, June 28th. A similar occasion or a similar occurrence yet again happened this month, just actually on the 28th. That was yesterday when the CDF of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, that is Muhoozi Kainerugaba, confirmed to the whole world that after consultations with his dad, Museveni, they decided, or they made up their mind to shut down Daily Monitor and NTV with their sister stations, including KFM, Dembe FM, and Spark Television, and other franchises. That includes Nyanda and other publications, of course. So this comes at a time when press freedom is facing a serious debacle, a serious debate in Uganda. So let me take you back. Now, the fuse was lit on May 7th, 2013, when the newspaper published an explosive, deeply classified leaked letter written by General David Sejjusa, formerly Tinyefuza, who was then the coordinator of intelligence services. The letter was addressed to the Director General of the Internal Security Organization, ISO. In it, Sejjusa alleged that there was a highly orchestrated undercover plot to eliminate or assassinate senior political and military officials who were openly opposed to the Muhoozi project. The purported plan to fast-track President Yoweri Museveni's son, Brigadier General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, by then into the presidency. Now, the disclosure of this internal military lift caused, of course, immediate panic within the state machinery, which viewed the leak as a treasonous breach of national security. No wonder that after how many years, that is 2013, today is 2026, a newspaper that, of course, published a letter that was leaked by, of course, General David Sejjusa, claiming by then, alleging that, of course, there was a move to assassinate senior political and military officials who were openly opposed to the Muhoozi project. It is now, it's no longer news. It's no longer a question that indeed time has exonerated Daily Monitor and General David Tinyefuza, or General David Sejjusa. Remember, Tinyefuza dropped his name after coming back from the exile, and you remember everything that happened during that. He fled Uganda after the publication of that story. He came back as Sejjusa, just loosely translated as I don't regret. I have no regrets. Tinyefuza, from Tinyefuza to Sejjusa, I do not regret. Purporting, or it was like a meaning or a signal that he has no regrets whatsoever. And we previously, actually after that, when he came back, we saw him in the State House meeting the CIC, or the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, after Daily Monitor. But, well, time indeed exonerated Daily Monitor, because as we speak now, it's really no news. You can confirm that the de facto president, or the de facto leader we have today, is General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. By then he was a brigadier general by the time the letter was leaked. So now I will take you into the political environment, how it was in 2013. Now I will take you back into the dichotomy of this, the comparisons and contrasting what was there during 2013 and what is in existence in 2026, comparing the political environments in 2013 and the 2026. The difference is in 2013, we had just finished the 2011 general elections. Mark this right. By the time the Daily Monitor was shut down, was closed, we had just finished the 2011 general elections. Oh, yes, we had finished actually a year down the road in 2011. Now 2013, a story comes out. Now, this time round, they have been shut down after a few months after the election, just a few months after the election. That's the only difference. But the similarity were the nation was coming from an election. That's the similarity. But the other similarity, the first attempt in 2013, it was for publishing a story against Muhoozi project, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Similar occasion, it happens in 2026 about the same issue, Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I think even the person who must have closed Daily Monitor in 2013 must have been Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Anyway, what do I know? Now, to understand the gravity of this disclosure, one has to look at the political climate of Uganda and at the time in 2013. So now let's rewind. President Yoweri Museveni had been in power for 27 years by then. Now the country was experiencing a protracted political hangover from the high-octane walk-to-work protests of 2011-2012, led by retired Dr. Kanukiza Besigye, incarcerated today. Now, the state was hyper-vigilant and highly reactive to any forms of public mobilization or organized dissent. Just look at this in this way. Let me explain this to you in the simplest terms possible. We had just finished the general elections. Now, retired Dr. Kanukiza Besigye started the walk-to-work protests. By then, the fuel prices had skyrocketed all over, actually globally. Same thing happening today. The fuel prices skyrocketing. Now, this goes to all of you who do not follow political events. Now, for us who have been following, in 2011, after the general election, the fuel prices and everything skyrocketed, including prices of commodities and even, yes, the inflation. There was lots of inflation in 2011 by then, after the general election. Now, 2011, 2026, same thing happens. But this time round, retired Dr. Kanukiza Besigye, by then who led the walk-to-work protests, is incarcerated today, together with Alhaji Obed Lutale and others, including his counsel, Salungerias Rukwago. Now, most importantly, the Muhoozi project was a deeply forbidden topic. Everyone in political space or political circles was just whispering about it, but not active. The top-tier military insider had ever documented it as an official conspiracy until Sejusa broke the ranks. Now, a public rebellion from a historic Bushwo general signaled a historic fracture within the core architecture of the army, that's the UPDF, making it an of course existential issue for the regime. Now, let's look at the newsroom and the giant journalists of that era. We want to know the boldness, those who braved and made sure that this story get published. By then, who were the big names in Daily Monitor and by then in the print media, as far as print media was concerned in 2013. Now, during that period, Daily Monitor newsroom was arguably at its zenith as the premier bastion of independent investigative journalism in East Africa. Of course, it was characterized by aggressive reporting on grand corruption. Of course, remember like the office of the Prime Minister scandals, the executive overreach, and the detailed power dynamic breakdowns. Now, the newsroom was driven by an iconic roster of journalists, editors, and columnists. Now, by then, the Daily Monitor had Don Wanyama. Don Wanyama today, he's the head of New Vision. He replaced Robert Kabushenga. By then, he had just been appointed managing editor in May 2013, thrown directly into the deep end of a historic state confrontation. Just imagine. He had just been appointed managing director in 2013, thrown directly into the deep end of a historic state confrontation. Now there was Charles Odobo Bichachi, a battle-tested editorial force, ensuring strict, balanced, yet uncompromising copy layout. This now goes back to those of you, of course, who studied journalism. You remember the advertising copy layout. I think my brother Mordecai, there's my brother in New Vision, Kitubi Martin, and the likes. Yeah, I have many colleagues nationwide who are practicing journalists, of course. Now, in 2013, there was Chris Obole. Chris Obole was a fierce, legendary chief investigative reporter and talk show host, widely feared by government officials for his raw, relentless style of digging up secrets. Today, he happens to be the spokesperson of such a tainted institution, the parliament. You remember the guy who danced and tossed and even jubilated, "We are in things." Yeah, he was once part of those cream de la cream of the Daily Monitor by then in 2013. Now, we had the Tabu Butajira, a premier senior reporter and correspondent known for cracking complex geopolitical, security, and diplomatic stories. Now, by then even there was Richard Wanambwa and Risdale Kasasida, the elite defense and security reporting duo, who actually broke and co-authored the explosive seducer story, directly bearing the brunt of state interrogation. Richard Wanambwa and Risdale Kasasida, those were the guys actually. Now, he has just actually retired. Oh yes, Daniel Kalinaki. Although transitioning into regional nation media group rose around this time, his legacy of structured editorial independency heavily anchored the newsroom's defiance. Now, let's look at the anatomy of the debacle, the 11-day siege. And of course, the state's response shifted swiftly from legal pressure to raw physical intimidation. When the authors of the story refused to break the golden rule of journalism, protecting their confidential source, the government retaliated, of course. And the crisis unfolded in a tense day-by-day standoff. Now, the exposure, of course, happened on May 7th, 2013, Daily Monitor publishing General Seducer's letter detailing the assassination plots and the Muhoozi project. The public reaction is electric. The state's reaction is furious. That's what happened. Now, what ensued, or what followed, or what preceded next was the interrogations. Now, of course, May 14th to May 16th, 2013, reporters including Richard Wanambwa, Risdale Kasasida, and Managing Director Don Wanyama were summoned by the Criminal Investigations Department, CID. They endured days of aggressive questioning, but they refused to surrender the physical letter or name their source, citing journalistic privilege under the Press and Journalistic Act. Now, of course, like matters escalated, of course, the raid and the takedown, of course, on May 20th. I'm now just giving a breakdown of what happened during 2013. The first time Daily Monitor was, of course, shut down by the state. of the letter, of course, that caused public outrage or state outrage. Of course, I think that's how I can talk about it. Now, on May 20th, 2013, dozens of heavily armed police and plain-clothed intelligence agents stormed the Namwong headquarters like it is today, armed with a magistrate's search warrant. This time around, no warrant, no anything, no court order. Now in 2013, May 20th, they declare the entire premises a crime scene, disable the printing press and 4 sister radio stations, KFM and Dembe FM, off air. The red paper in Namave was raided concurrently as well. Ndugu Stanley and I dedicate this to you. One of the legendaries, actually the legendary journalist actually in the print media we have. I think by the time 2013, I think he was still there when the red paper was as well raided. I think it was just I don't know, but May 22nd till May 28th, the premises remained under a military camp, or remained a military camp instead of a camp for journalists or a workplace for journalists. The premises remained a military camp. Now, journalists, civil society activists, and press freedom bodies like the Human Rights Network for Journalists, Uganda, HRNJ Uganda, launched massive solidarity protests outside the gates, resulting in violent clashes, tear gassing, and multiple arrests. Even when the Daily Monitor secured a formal court order instructing the police to vacate, the state openly defied it. Now, by the time Daily Monitor was closed on the weekend, or during weekend this time around, and we are waiting to see the legal battles, whether they will do the same, take to court, and they force the military or the security forces to vacate. We are yet to see that, since the raid happened during a weekend, and of which courts aren't open during that time. So now on May 30th, it was reopened 2013, following 10 days of absolute financial hemorrhage and intense international diplomatic pressure. The siege was called off after frantic high-level negotiations between Nation Media Group executives and President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Same thing happening still in 2026, where General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the CDF, posted that he has spoken with Andrew Mwenda, and he said, this is what he tweeted, that as Comrade Andrew Mwenda said, we are having discussions with our allies in the UK and Europe about reopening both NTV and Daily Monitor. We shall take the results of these discussions to Mzee for final approval. And of course, Andrew Mwenda, who happens to be, of course, the founder of The Independent. Remember, he has well worked at the Monitor Publications. He tweeted that I have just held discussions with General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and we, as leaders of the Patriotic League of Uganda, PLOU, have agreed that we shall reopen both Daily Monitor and NTV soon. However, we shall first have discussions with the management of both sister companies. I will inform them when we can have this meeting. Remember, Andrew Mwenda is an ex-employee of Daily Monitor or Nation Media. Today, he subscribes to the Patriotic League of Uganda. He's an ally. Now, this is what he tweets. He's a journalist, actually, who says that he and the leaders of PLU have agreed that him and the leaders of PLU, they have agreed that they shall reopen both Daily Monitor and NTV soon. However, they shall first have discussions with the management. In this tweet, he doesn't mention anywhere the offense Daily Monitor and NTV committed. He doesn't. And this is a fellow journalist, actually, because yes, he did journalism, and we can't take away that. That is a fact. But who knows what follows next. That is total. Now, so following 10 days of absolute financial hemorrhage and intense international diplomatic pressure, the siege was called off after frantic high-level negotiations between Nation Media Group executives and President Museveni. Same thing happening, history just repeating itself. So even in 2013, those of you who think that Muhoozi Kainerugaba has just started today, the idea of the project was already in the coughing. I think those in the military thought that it was just in the coughing stage, or it was just being molded. But I guess this thing started way back, and today it's just blossoming. I think that's what I can tell you. Now, the reopening conditions and what happened thereafter. Let's go to the conditions. What were the conditions, the terms and conditions for the reopening in May 2013? Now, in case you're my new subscriber, please don't forget to subscribe, or you're just my new follower, please do consider subscribing. Do share this video, and you can as well share it to your relatives or friends so that they could just join this space of discussing matters of national importance. I thank you so much for doing that, and please, you can share in so many WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups, as many as you can, and let others know that yes, this channel exists and we grow as a family. Now, let me take you to the terms and conditions which were agreed upon before the reopening of Daily Monitor in 2013. Now the gates finally reopened, but freedom came with a visible corporate price tag. The state did not live without forcing structural concessions. The Internal Affairs Minister, by then Hilary Onek, announced that the management of Daily Monitor had given written undertakings to secure their operations. Number one, to strictly publish or air stories that are properly sourced, verified, and factual. Oh my God, that they will strictly publish or air stories that are properly sourced, verified, and factual. I think by now we all know. Was the story factual? Was it verified? Was it properly sourced? This was, of course, gagging up against the media, gagging the media, of course. Now, two, it was to remain highly sensitive to national security concerns and completely avoid publishing stories that could cause public anxiety, ethnic polarization, or military disaffection. Oh my God. Now, while Nation Media Group is top management, including the CEO, Linus Gitahi, publicly maintained that they had simply agreed to abide by their own existing internal editorial guidelines, the practical reality on the ground was a severe chill. Of course, the post-2013 era marked a definitive turning point for independent journalism in Uganda. An unwritten culture of heightened self-censorship inevitably set in, of course, particularly regarding sensitive military transition and succession talks. Now, over the next few years after that, the legendary cohesion of that 2013 newsroom disintegrated. Of course, many of the giant journalists shifted paths, often driven by the systematic pressures of surviving inside a heavily monitored media environment. Don Wanyama eventually transitioned into government communication, later becoming the senior presidential press secretary and eventually the CEO of the state-owned Vision Group. Chris Obole, of course, as we all know, moved to direct communications at the Parliament of Uganda. Now, the 2013 debacle ultimately demonstrated the absolute limits of press freedom when independent reporting collides head-on with the core architecture of state survival. Now, the situation unfolding today in Kampala, of course, as of June 28th, 2026 is a watershed moment it's a watershed moment for Uganda. Of course, what you're witnessing is not just a media crackdown, it is the raw, unfiltered execution of state power, bypassing all civilian institutions. And of course, I think this is why you need to have a deep dive into exactly why the Daily Monitor, NTV, Spark TV, KFM, and Dembe FM have been pulled off the air. The political realities driving it and the massive implications for the country. Now let's start with the catalyst for this time around. Let's look back at the midnight tweets, and you need to understand that the closure wasn't executed through a court order or the Uganda Communications Commission, or UCC. That is, of course, the body mandated to oversee communication networks, including the media, the telecom companies, name them. And it was initiated entirely via social media by General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the Chief of Defense Forces, CDF. Shortly after 1 a.m., of course, he posted a series of definitive directives. Number 1, NTV and Monitor being shut down from today. Both NTV and Monitor will not reopen without my permission. Muhoozi has approved my plan to close both NTV and Daily Monitor. We are moving immediately. This is what he's been tweeting. He tweeted actually on the night of 28th of June 2026, before the closure, before raiding the offices of Daily Monitor and NTV. Now, from now on, all bad stories about Uganda have to be cleared by my office. In Uganda, I do not believe in free press. The press shall be guided by cadres of the revolution. That is laughable, actually. This is where we're headed to. Now, by 5 a.m., heavily armed military personnel had sealed off the Nation Media Group NMG headquarters in Namwong and their studios at the Serena-based hotel. Now, the meaning of this is chilling. Military fiat has officially replaced civil law by stating the press must be guided by cadres of the revolution. The CDF is demanding absolute media subserviency. Yes, it's like turning newsrooms into public relations or public relation wings of the military or even the state. That's so simple. Now, let's look at the 2013 versus the 2026. The rumor becoming the regime. The rumor now is, I think the Daily Monitor needs to be appreciated that they boldly braved up and published the story of which everything we are seeing today is no longer a question of what happens next. Was it right? It's a question of what happens next. Now, the irony between 2013 siege and today's closure is profound. In 2013, the Daily Monitor, of course, was shut down for 10 to 11 days because they published General David Sejusa's later exposing the Muhoozi project. Now, of course, the alleged secret plan to groom Muhoozi to succeed his father. Back then, the government fiercely denied it, treating the very idea as a treasonous, destabilizing lie. Today, the smoke has cleared. The project is no longer a conspiracy. It is the reality. Muhoozi is now the CDF. He's openly making executive decisions, commanding the military to shut down nation media, and citing his father's directive approval. Now, the 2013 story that landed the Daily Monitor in trouble was simply a preview of the 2026 reality. The state is no longer hiding the transition, they are violently enforcing it. Now, let's look at the bad stories. What must have triggered the siege? While Muhoozi didn't point out at any point to one specific article like Sejusa letter of 2013, this time around, he explicitly cited his anger over bad stories about Uganda. Since 2025, heading into the highly volatile 2026 general elections, of course, NMG consistently refused to toe the state line. The trouble stems from their cumulative hard-hitting coverage of the security establishment. Number one, let's look at the UPDF Amendment Act of 2025. The Nation Media Group extensively covered this highly controversial law, which allows civilians to be tried even today in military courts, despite the Supreme Court quashing that or saying that it is illegal. But after a turnaround and an amendment last year, now that law sees civilians being tried in military courts. Now their reporting, of course, highlighted how vague provisions were being used to, of course, target political opposition and civilians. Now, the election build-up and crackdowns, the nation media platforms have always actively reported on the shrinking civic space, arbitrary arrests of opposition leaders, and the aggressive posturing of the military in civilian political spaces. The economic realities. Now, while the state aggressively pushes narratives of wealth creation and middle-income status, now the Daily Monitor and NTV have continuously highlighted the harsh realities of inflation, youth unemployment, and the systematic corruption. Furthermore, last year, even 2025, the Daily Monitor ran a story under the headline "Bye-bye to Rule of Law," outlining how the civilian or the military rule has, of course, waved goodbye to the rule of law and replaced it. And this emanated, of course, from a series of unconstitutional and constitutional violations, including, of course, the UPDF Amendment Act, plus plus other human rights violations like abductions and everything that did not follow the law or over 2025 before we headed into the election. Now, to a military leadership demanding and questioning loyalty, cadres of the revolution, independent journalism that questions state narratives is viewed not as reporting but as sabotage. We all have to know that. Now, let's have a look at the Aga Khan factor, a lost diplomatic shield. That is a massive under-discussed factor in today's closure, as the recent corporate shake-up at NMG. In March 2026, of course this year, the Aga Khan Fund for Economic Development, ACFED, announced the sale of its controlling 54.08 stake in NMG to Tarifa Limited, owned by Tanzanian businessman Rostam Aziz. Of course, this ended Aga Khan's 60-year ownership. And of course, this profoundly impacted their operations. For decades, the Aga Khan provided an invisible diplomatic force field around the Daily Monitor, because he is a global spiritual leader with immense international influence and massive investments across East Africa. The Ugandan government knew that attacking this or his properties could carry severe diplomatic consequences. With the Aga Khan's exit finalizing over the last 3 months, of course, the protective shield vanished. While Rostam Aziz is wealthy, he does not wield the same global, untouchable status. The Ugandan military likely calculated that the geopolitical cost of raiding NMG had dropped significantly, emboldening them to strike. And of course, I think this has made it easier, of course, for the military or for the state this time around too, because there's nothing to scare them anymore or any further, or there's no shame whatsoever. Now, counting down the cost and the consequences to the state, now shutting down the country's largest independent media house is a massive self-inflicted wound for the government, carrying severe implications. Number one, the economic shock and investor panic. Now, Nation Media employs over 500 Ugandans. Shutting it down immediately halts major tax revenues, pay as you earn, VAT, corporate tax, mention them. Worse, it absolutely destroys investor confidence. Rostam Aziz just bought into the market, and within months, his multi-million-dollar investment is seized by the military. This signals to global investors that property rights in Uganda can be erased by a single late-night tweet or even a call. And that means that, of course, we have an information vacuum as well, and a paranoia. Information vacuum and a paranoia. When you shut down, of course, trusted professional news sources like the Daily Monitor, NTV, Spark TV, and the rest, you demand, and the demand for information doesn't disappear, of course, from the audience. No, it just moves to the dark web. Unregulated blogs and rumor mills. It creates a highly paranoid society that is actually much harder for intelligence agencies to track and manage. And then I think the diplomatic fallout occurring just months after the 2026 elections. This provides undeniable proof to the international community and donor partners that the state is operating under open military authoritative, we call it authoritarianism. Yes. So it is a public, it is a global expose of the state as far as the diplomatic fallout is concerned, that just after the 2026 elections, this provides, and it's just the proof, undeniably. You cannot deny this. How would you deny that we are not under military authoritarianism? How would you deny that? So, even if Robert Chagwen Sentamu or Bobby Wine goes out there and says we are under military state, this just exposes you that just the CDF wakes up in the middle of the night, he tweets that you are going to switch off the monitor, it is switched off, and business goes on as usual. So the closure of Daily Monitor yesterday isn't just about silencing a newspaper or a TV station. It is a very, very, very loud public declaration that the rules of engagement in Uganda have fundamentally changed. Now, looking at another thing, like maybe you need to know about, let me just put it bluntly, from a strictly legal standpoint. The unilateral shutdown of nation media group platforms by the Chief of Defense Forces has absolutely zero legal standing. Under Ugandan law, it is a textbook case for an ultra vires act, meaning an action taken completely outside the scope of an individual's lawful authority. Now, what Uganda is witnessing right now is the exercise of the de facto power, that is power enforced through physical military force, entirely representing or replacing the de jure authority, what we call the de jure or de jure authority, the lawful power established by the constitution and the statutes. Yeah, and let me give you, or let me just break down how exactly the law breaks it down for you, and why this move completely bypasses Uganda's legal architecture. Number one, the constitutional violations. Now, the 1995 Constitution of Uganda is the supreme law of the land, we all know, and it explicitly bars the military from arbitrating civilian affairs or suppressing fundamental rights. According to Article 29, subsection 1A, explicitly guarantees the right to freedom of speech and expression, of course, which includes freedom of the press and other media. Any limitation on this right must be demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society and handed through transparent and legal channels. 2. Articles 208 and 209 of the UPDF mandate. These articles clearly define the functions of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Now, the military's job is to defend the sovereignty of Uganda and cooperate with civilian authority. The military is given no mandate, the police powers, or jurisdiction to regulate civilian businesses, police newsrooms, or censor the press. 2. the sidelining statutory regulators. Now, Uganda has specific acts we all know of Parliament that govern media operations. By using troops to lock down Namuongo and the Serena Hotel studios, the military, of course, effectively stripped the actual lawful institutions of their powers. Number one, we have the Uganda Communications Act of 2013, of which this law establishes the Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, as the sole regulator for electronic media, including television, that's NTV, Spark TV, and radio stations like KFM, Dembe FM. Now the UCC has strict administrative procedures, hearing protocols, and a communications tribunal to address content violations. The CDF holds no legal position or decision-making power within the UCC framework as per the law, and even under the UCC Act 2013, it's nowhere. If we are to abide and follow the Constitution, if we are to go by that. Now, if you look at the Press and Journalist Act, Cap 105, this law governs print media like the Daily Monitor. Disciplinary matters, professional standards, and operational compliance are the exclusive domain of the Media Council. The law provides absolutely no avenue for any army commander to summarily close a publication based on social media declarations just in a tweet, if we are to follow the law. Now, let's look at the presidential. Muhoozi said, of course, his dad or the president ordered him. Now, let's take a look at the presidential permission fallacy. Of course, in his statements on X, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba asserted that he possesses this authority because it was given to him by his great father, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, back in 2017. Legally, a verbal directive, the parental permission, or presidential decree cannot override statutory law or the Constitution. Even the president, acting as the commander-in-chief, must exercise power within the boundaries of the law. The executive branch cannot legally delegate. Yes, it cannot legally delegate regulatory authority over civilian media to a military officer, especially when doing so openly violates explicit acts of Parliament. Now, there is a violation of property rights and due process. Now, the civilian corporate entities like Monta Publication Limited operate under civil and commercial laws. For any security agents to declare a private business premise a restricted zone, they generally require a specific written court order or a warrant issued by a competent judicial officer. Now, executing a raid based purely on an individual social media thread completely discards judicial oversight and due process. So, what is the bottom line? By bypassing the UCC, the Media Council, and the judiciary, this action marks a fundamental shift away from institutional governance. It creates a profound legal crisis where military commands are treated as binding law over civilians, leaving the targeted media houses with no immediate legal safety net, as the forces enforcing the shutdown answer strictly to the military chain of command rather than civil courts. You see where we're headed. It's a tough one. So, let's see how the new owner, of course, Rostam Aziz, is likely to respond to this military takeover of his new West investment, and what leverage does he have today? That's a good one. This is of course, an analysis. Yes, for those who would love to have an English version of this. Yeah. So the sudden military shutdown of Nation Media Group platforms, of which this happened on June 28th, 2026, has set up a massive high-stakes chess match between raw military power and elite East African capital. Now, the Tanzanian billionaire Rostam Aziz is not just any corporate executive. He is a consummate political operator and a titan of regional commerce, having just finalized the acquisition of his 54.08% controlling stake in NMG from the Aga Khan in March this year, and chained a highly publicized annual general meeting just 2 days ago on June 26th. This crisis strikes at the very heart of his new multi-million-dollar investment. Aziz's response will likely look very, very different from an activist or a purely local owner, and the leverage he possesses could give the state serious pause. So now, how will the new investor, or how is the newest investor likely to respond? Now, Aziz is historically a pragmatic, behind-the-scenes strategist rather than a public blower. He understands the mechanics of power in East Africa intimately and of late. Now, bypassing the CDF to target the presidency, Aziz will almost, of course, certainly ignore General Muhoozi's provocative declarations on X and head straight to President Yoweri Museveni. He will frame the shutdown not as a press freedom debate, but as a direct assault on his foreign direct investment, or FDI, and regional trade agreements too. He might, or he could, deploy quiet geopolitical diplomacy rather than relying purely on the Ugandan court system. Of course, as is expected to activate state-level back channels, he will look to handle this as a bilateral matter between the government of Tanzania and Uganda. And he can as well secure immediate protection for executives, with Moz openly calling for the arrest of NMG Uganda Managing Director Susan Nsibirwa on social media. Aziz's first operational priority will be deploying top-tier legal teams to secure her safety and prevent the military from completely dismantling the company's human capital. So, does Aziz have any? Does he have any? Does he has any? Do we have to see any leverage? And why Aziz can fight back? Is there anything to fight for? Of course, yes. Of course, where the state stripped away the Aga Khan's spiritual and international diplomatic shield, Rostam Aziz holds a completely different, it's a highly potent set of economic and political, of course, cards. Number one, the Tanzanian State Alliance and the ECOP card. Yeah, Aziz, one of the, of course, the Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan's closest economic allies and a historically influential figure within Tanzania's ruling party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, CCM. Of course, he is an economic kingmaker in Tanzania and East Africa. Now, by aggressively seizing his property just 3 months after he bought it, now the Ugandan military has inadvertently insulted the Tanzanian business elite. Crucially, Uganda and Tanzania are deeply dependent on the East African crude oil pipeline, that's the ECOP project, which transports Uganda's oil to Tanzania's Tanga port. Now, President Museveni cannot afford a major diplomatic rift with Dodoma and Dar es Salaam right now. If President Samia Suluhu takes a dim view of her close allies' capital being violently targeted in Kampala, the geopolitical fallout could be severe, or they can threaten anything to do with that. So there is something to, yes, the newest investor can use that back door as well. Now, there is a cross-border economic retaliation, the Taifa Gas. Aziz is the chairman of the Taifa Group, his flagship enterprise. Now, the Taifa Gas is currently executing a massive, aggressive expansion across East Africa, including substantial investments and operations directly inside Uganda to distribute liquefied petroleum gas, LPG. Now, because Aziz has major skin in Uganda's energy game outside of the media, of course, the Ugandan government has to calculate the risk of tit-for-tat economic friction. Now, harming Aziz's media house could destabilize his broader corporate appetite for investing in Uganda's infrastructure, signaling a dangerous environment to other multi-sector regional conglomerates. Now, 3, there is the regional publicly listed corporate factor. Now, Nation Media is headquartered in Kenya and listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, while being cross-listed across the region. This means the shutdown is not just a localized Ugandan problem. It directly damages the portfolio values of institutional investors and shareholders across Kenya and Tanzania. Now, Aziz can of course leverage the collective outrage of regional business bodies, the East African Business Council or the EABC, and Kenyan corporate interests to mount immense pressure on Kampala to maybe respect corporate property rights. That's a good one as well. Of course, there is what you have to know, the ultimate conflict. That what you need to know, that there is no longer this is no longer just a battle between a government and a critical newspaper. It is a collision between an aggressive military transition plan inside Uganda and the realities of integrated East African capital. Now, how Museveni balances his son's revolutionary decrees against the vital economic goodwill of Tanzania and regional investors, of course, this will determine so much how long the screens in Namongo remain blank. I think you're getting the gist out of this. Now, I'll take you to the statement that was issued yesterday by the Uganda Communications Commission, the UCC, through its Executive Director, Honorable Nyombi Tembo. Of course, it was a fascinating exercise in bureaucratic survival, structure avoidance, and political impotency. I think you must have come across that document released by the Executive Director of the UCC, Honorable Nyombi Tembo. So, to go straight forward, the statement does not make any logical, legal, or administrative sense. However, it makes the perfect tactical sense for an institution trying to survive a storm it cannot control. That is the simplest analysis, of course, of that document or press statement that was released by the communication body that is mandated to oversee all communication bodies or communication companies, media, telecom companies, mention them, the UCC. So, in brief, yes, following the early morning military raid on the Nation Media Group yesterday on their premises and everything, the UCC, of course, released a brief, carefully sanitized statement in quotes. Now, the Uganda Communications Commission has noted the circumstances that have led to the Nation Media Group's outlets, including NTV Uganda, Spark TV, Dembe FM, and KFM, going off air. Consultations have begun with the relevant government stakeholders to obtain verified information. The Commission urges the public to remain calm and allow these consultations to proceed. We will provide further updates as appropriate once the consultations conclude. Now, you need to know why I say that, why that statement or the press statement that was issued by the UCC Executive Director makes zero legal sense. By law, the UCC is the supreme independent statutory regulator of all electronic communications and broadcasting in Uganda, under the Communications Act of 2013. Now, number one, the ignorance plea. The statement, of course, claims the UCC is consulting to obtain verified information on why stations went off the air. Yet you're the one mandated. This is functionally absurd, actually. The Chief of the Defense Forces, CDF, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, explicitly announced the shutdown to the entire world on X hours before the troops arrived. For the country's telecom and broadcast regulator to act as if the shutdown is an unexplained technical mystery or a sudden anomaly requires a willful suspension of reality. Now there is the word of choice, as to those of you who studied, of course, the public relations and communication, or even like to those who would love to know what this means. The UCC deliberately says the stations are going off air. This passive phrasing completely removes human agents. They did not go off air due to a power outage or a signal failure, of course. They were forcibly turned off by armed soldiers who cut the electricity and backup generators at the Serena Hotel and sealed off Namuongo. Now, what can we pick from the UCC statement? It's crucial as well. Reading between the lines of this brief text tells us, of course, something we need to know about the current state of governance in Kampala or in Uganda. Now, the absolute terror of naming the perpetrator. If you can notice, the press statement misses, of course, there is zero mention of the UPDF, zero mention of the military, and crucially, zero mention of General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Of course, it misses that. It misses the reason as like who, why, and how, or what caused. You get it. Misses the basic questions. Why? Why was it shut down? Who ordered? Actually, the biggest question is why, because that's what the press statement would entail. Now, the UCC cannot bring itself to name the person who actually executed the shutdown, because doing so would force them to either condemn an illegal military act or admit they have been entirely stripped of their powers, now bowing to military supremacy. The press statement confirms by stating they are consulting relevant government stakeholders, which is code for the military and the presidency. The UCC is openly admitting that the chain of command regulating broadcasting in Uganda no longer runs through their offices in Bugorobi. It runs through the military headquarters. 2. The diffusing public panic. Now, they call for the public to remain calm. Of course, this is an attempt to manage the information vacuum. The state knows that pulling NTV, Spark TV, KFM, and Dembe FM off the air simultaneously creates an immediate sense of national crisis. Now, UCC's job here is to act as an administrative shock absorber, projecting an illusion of orderly consultation while raw military force dictates the terms. So, when you call the public to remain calm, it's just an attempt of managing the information vacuum. Please remain calm, remain calm. The situation is oh my God. So, now the biggest question as we face today, there is a question of institutional breakdown. Actually, it's no longer a question. It is a matter of fact that we have institutional breakdown in Uganda. Now, this crisis leaves the Uganda Communications Commission completely humiliated and legally irrelevant, like other bodies, of course, because all institutions in Uganda are broken down. They are down, all of them. So now, for years, the UCC has aggressively enforced its mandate against independent media, regularly summoning journalists, suspending presenters, and issuing strict, of course, minimum broadcasting standards. Yet, the moment a military commander bypasses their entire institution to shut down the largest media house in the country with just a midnight tweet, of course, the regulator is reduced to standing outside the gates, politely asking the military for verified information. It's now for UCC to ask, why was Daily Monitor closed? It's now for the UCC. So, moving forward, the UCC can no longer claim to be an independent regulator body or regulatory body. This precedent signals to every other broadcaster in Uganda, like the NBS or Next Media, all media houses, that holding a valid license from the UCC means absolutely nothing if you cross the military hierarchy. Now, the UCC has been exposed as a bystander, of course, in its own sector, reduced to a rubber stamping executive and military fiats after the fact. That is the impasse we have. So now, of course, when the head of the military can summarily switch off the most prominent independent broadcaster and newspaper via social media, it signals the death of deniability, and Uganda has officially shifted from a hybrid democracy to an overt military censorship regime. Now, let's look at the implications of Uganda's freedom and press freedom and international image. Now, the immediate domestic and international fallouts from this move, of course, will be severe, impacting severe key areas. Number one, the normalization of military rule. This closure, of course, demonstrates that civilian structures like courts and regulators no longer hold or sway over the security apparatus. It, of course, tells the average citizen that if the largest media conglomerate in East Africa can be blocked or can be locked down overnight without a single legal charge, of course, no individual's civil liberties or constitutional rights are secure or even shall be respected. Now there is what we call the pariah state trajectory. Now internationally, this move entirely dismantles the diplomatic capital Kampala has spent years building. Of course, occurring right in the shadow of the 2026 electoral season, it signals to diplomatic donors or partners, the United Nations, the human rights bodies, that the upcoming political transition will not be mediated by diplomatic processes but enforced by the gun. That's another confirmation and implication. So now let's have a look or a glance on the economic whiplash. The global markets detest unpredictability. Now, when a country's chief of defense forces openly declares, in quotes, that in Uganda I do not believe in a free press, it flashes seriously, actually, it flashes a serious, massive red warning sign to foreign direct investment. It tells global capital that property rights are subject to, of course, individual military whims, which will inevitably trigger capital flight and damage regional trade instability or stability. Now, we need to know that the 2026 shutdown did not happen in a vacuum. It is the culmination of a decade-long systematic assault on journalism. Now, the state's recent record is defined by two primary tactics. One, fiscal brutality on the streets, and two, the weaponization of legislation. Now, journalists covering opposition political rallies, most notably during the chaotic 2021 general elections, were systematically beaten, pepper sprayed, and shot with rubber bullets by military police. Now, legally, the state has continuously re-engineered the law to criminalize the independent thinking. Weaponized statutes like the amended Computer Misuse Act have been, of course, repeatedly used to arrest critical writers, journalists, and citizens under the vague guise of suppressing offensive communication and fake news. However, of course, the Computer Misuse Act was the Constitutional Court, of course, declared that null and void. And of course, furthermore, the total blockage on Facebook, which was actually of recent lifted and active over 2021, remains, of course, a stark reminder of the state's willingness to structurally sever information paths. Now, as we wind up, let's look at, of course, the Press Freedom Index. Yes, because I cannot fail to discuss it, because it's a matter of fact that this is the closure of Delmont and NTV was violating press freedoms. Of course, it was in violation of press freedom. Now, the global rank out of 180 countries which are ranked globally every year. Of course, in 2016, Uganda Uganda was in the 102nd position, and of which that classification was problematic. And it saw, of course, what I can take as the problematic after, I think that was the aftermath of course, the election, post-election crackdowns and targeting of journalists and opposition. Now in 2017, Uganda dropped to the 112th position. That was problematic as well. Remember the age limit debate, heavy censorship of the media, live reporting. You remember all that. In 2018, as per the report I have, Uganda continued dropping. We dropped to 117th position as far as the press freedom is concerned globally. That was problematic as well. Now there was the introduction of the social media act. I remember, when was the OTT? I think it was around the same era actually. Yes, the same period, of which in 2019 we kept on dropping, going down, went to the 125th position. That was difficult. In 2020 we maintained 125th position, difficult. 2021 we maintained they were 125th position. All these featuring of course violent elections and so forth. In 2022 we dropped to 132nd. In 2023 130 in the position of 133. Yeah. 2024 128th, 2025 141st, and now 2026 we are in the 143rd position. Very serious. And now that's how far the press freedom is concerned as far as the rankings are concerned. Now, on the global stage, out of the 180 countries assessed, today Uganda sits at 143rd. This places it this places Uganda firmly in the bottom quarter of the world, sharing a tire with highly repressive states, conflict zones, and absolute autocracies. It is officially categorized as a very serious environment, meaning independent journalism is treated as existential hazard. Now, within Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, Uganda has become a highly polarized media landscape. While nations like Namibia and South Africa consistently anchor the continent with relatively strong protections, Uganda has sunk into the bottom tier matrix of shame. It now keeps company with the most closed societies on the continent, including Somalia, Djibouti, Sudan, and Eritrea. So, within the East African community, the regional comparison reveals stark truth about the current political climate. Kenya and Tanzania, despite their own internal political battles and occasional legislative overreach, both maintain significantly more vibrant, open, and legally protected media ecosystems, ranking noticeably higher than Uganda. The bottom tier, Uganda's rapid downward spiral, has pulled it directly down, of course, to the level of Rwanda, 146th, and Burundi. Now, independent reporting in the heart of East Africa has become an endangered practice, with Uganda, or Kampala and Kigali, moving closer toward mirror image policies on absolute information control. So, this shows you that the state is no longer interested in managing the news. Their intent is on dictating it. That's what we can tell you. So, I think that's something I had for you this afternoon, this morning, this evening. I think like maybe before I leave, I'll just let you know how other organizations or different people have reacted. now against the meter raid and forced closure of the Nation Media Group platforms including NTV Uganda, Spark TV, the Daily Monitor, KFM and Dembe FM, which has of course triggered immediate and sharp condemnation from global media watchdogs and regional bodies. Because Chief of Defense Forces General Muhoozi Kainerugaba bypassed standard regulatory channels like the Uganda Communications Commission, UCC, and openly declared on X that he does not believe in a free press, international organizations are treating this military siege as a severe constitutional crisis. Now, part of the organizations which have come out to condemn this include the Committee to Protect Journalists, or the CPJ, of which this is the Africa program, issued they issued a swift public condemnation shortly after armed troops surrounded NMG's facilities at, of course, the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Namuwongo. I quote, they said that the use of state security forces to carry out publicly announced threats against independent media is a deeply troubling escalation. Of course, CPJ is calling for the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of military personnel from all media offices. They have also raised alarms regarding General Muhoozi's social media orders, commanding police patrols to target the arrest of NMG Uganda Managing Director Susan Nsibirwa. Now, of course, there is another organization known as Reporters Without Borders, RSF, which currently, of course, ranks Uganda as 131st out of the 180 countries on its World Press Freedom Index, of which they have gone ahead to categorize this raid as a massive regression that, of course, threatens to completely dismantle independent journalism in the country. Now, RSF, of course, advocates are pointing out that while Uganda saw a minor technical rise in the independent earlier in the index earlier this year, the direct use of raw military power to crush a media house over unfavorable reporting fulfills their long-standing classification of the state leadership as a major threat to press safety in the Great Lakes region. Now, RSF, of course, is currently lobbying diplomatic missions in Kampala to issue joint statements demanding that government restrict or respects due process. Now, let's look at how the regional and local bodies have, of course, responded. The National Association of Broadcasters, NAB, in Uganda, of course, that is an association of all broadcasters where the Nation Media, the NTV, and which subscribes to, of which the association released an immediate statement expressing deep concern over the abrupt silencing of at least 6 major broadcasting and publishing outlets, warning of a catastrophic chilling effect across the entire local media ecosystem. Now, East Africa's media syndicates, because of course Nation Media is headquartered in Kenya, Nairobi. Now the military siege has of course drawn intense focus from regional media houses across East Africa. Now regional journalist bodies are pointing out that targeting East Africa's largest independent media group violates the free expression principles or the free press principles enshrined in the East African Community Treaty. So the Nation Media can as well of course petition the Ugandan government using the East African Community Treaty, of course, which has been violated. Now there is a domestic opposition. Of course, opposition figures like Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, who happens to be the president of the National Unity Platform, have and others like Dr. Winnie Byanyima, Dr. the Right Honorable Emeritus Winnie Kiza, and others have widely condemned the shutdown, pointing to it as overt evidence of an ongoing shift toward open military rule, especially, of course, following a high tension environment of the general elections. So, international legal observers and human rights organizations are preparing, of course, to pressure major international donors and democratic allies. Unlike the 13-day shutdown of the Daily Monitor back in 2013, the global community's reaction is shifting toward assessing whether this action warrants formal diplomatic friction, given that the station blackouts and cut power lines have left over 500 media professionals locked out of their workplaces without an official legal decree. This is absurd. So, folks, wherever you are, I think we need to condemn in the strongest terms possible against the blackout and the shutdown of the conglomerate of a nation media, including stations like Spark TV, NTV, Daily Monitor, and others, Dembe FM. So this is a violation of the press freedom. And yes, Uganda, of course, is a signatory to so many treaties, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights under the UN, of which so many freedoms are enshrined, or they are written very, very well in black and white. But this is what's happening. So I think we need to condemn this as a citizenry and everyone of a sound mind and a civilized nature. So that's what I managed to compile for you and come down with this serious report about the nation media's blackout in Uganda and what it means and what the newest investor can do actually, plus the consequences that the government faces and the implications of this blackout. So in case you've just joined us today and that this was your first time to land on our channel, please do consider subscribing to us and share this video. Give us a comment about what we've just discussed, and you can as well share widely to so many people, your relatives, your friends, so that they can come and tap into the news and analysis that's being posted on this channel. My name is Moses Wamala. Stay blessed. I'll catch you right next into my next podcast. I love you and goodbye, or good night, good morning, wherever you tune in from. Ciao.
Uganda Eyenkya.